In this box are the final two prototypes of the SwitchPod. We're getting ready to kickstart it. I'm going to show you these in a second, but first I want to talk through some of the iterations we've made for all the different prototypes, from just the things that came out of my head the first time and the wacky ideas, all the way through all the little features and things that we've gotten feedback on from showing it to different vloggers and video pros, all the way to what we have now. So before I show you what the two final prototypes look like, let's talk through some of the design iterations that we've gone through to get to this point. So I'm gonna put this box down on the ground here, and I'm gonna talk through kind of the first physical version we got. So we had a bunch of conversations with Cole, who works over at Product, on the phone, just talking through all the different things we'd want out of a vlogging tripod. And this is kind of the first iteration that we came up with right here, this little shape. So a little bit of a finger handle here, and then a curve of the camera to get away from it. So this one didn't have a wrist support, but then we kind of came up with this idea. What if this little bit here actually supports your wrist? And so you'd hold it like this. This would kind of counterbalance the entire camera on top. It was a good idea at the time, maybe it was a bad idea. And then there was this, maybe you like did this, and so if you let go or something, it might not fall off your hand. I don't know, that was kind of a bad idea. So kind of went from there to this metal version to kind of get a feel of how heavy each of the tripod legs would be. Then we 3D printed some that had these grooves and kind of get a feel for all the different legs as well. Then we started getting into the motion of the legs and how they would actually open and kind of click into place. So we had these things here. Let me flip it upside down so you can actually see like that. We had these little release levers. So you'd have to actually release the piece. But even playing with these 3D printed versions, these little moving pieces would break. So we kind of came up with a new solution. Another thing we were doing on this iteration was maybe trying to include some sort of grip aspect to it to make it a little bit easier to grip. So there's little grip pieces here and on the outside and on the bottom, and using magnets as well. You can see some of our early iterations of using magnets. That was something we started to use as well. Then we had another version that was just, white, and then we sprayed on grip. And this is also the first version that has cutouts in it. And the whole purpose of the cutouts at first was just to limit weight. So if you made this out of a material and you cut out the middle, you would remove weight from it, and so this thing wouldn't be as heavy. But what we found using this in the real world is now you can kind of clip things through here. So you can use a carabiner or something, clip this onto a backpack. I just carry it like this a lot. Having those holes in there also enables you to kind of open it a little easier. But this was still a version where we had these release clips that you had to kind of release to let go. And those weren't the greatest. Here is a metal version of this, more kind of grip testing as well to get through that. Then we moved on to actually putting magnets in the top of this section. So this section here has magnets in it that actually lock the legs in place. So when they stay open, it's because magnets are kind of holding them there. And so this iteration, we had the middle leg be the one that the two legs would close to. But we found out that if you screw your camera on and you want to actually open this up and open the legs into a tripod position like this, then your camera isn't going to be pointed towards you because it was pointing towards this leg. So then in the next version, what we did was we made it so that this leg stays in place, and that's the direction that the camera will actually face. So in the final version, if you hold the right leg towards you like this and flip out the different legs, then it'll actually have the camera still pointed at you in the same direction. This was also one of our first attempts at figuring out what material this should be made of. This one, as you can see, was not a strong enough material because you can see it's kind of bowing and bending. This is kind of a glass nylon material. And then we kind of experimented with different colors because we were going to VidCon. So we made a red one and a black one in this kind of nylon flimsy material. And then we made this one, this first aluminum one, we spray painted silver. And so this silver one, this aluminum one, is still kind of my favorite version to date, other than the final one, because it feels so sturdy and it's the closest to the kind of material it'll be when we actually go to create these things. The magnesium alloy that we're going to be using is going to be closest to aluminum. Aluminum is just more expensive to produce and harder to create multiples of. This was actually machined from a machine as opposed to injection molding, which will be liquefying the material and fitting it into the different molds that'll be made. So this silver one here, we actually had finger grooves all along the top to enable you to kind of choke up on it. And this was one of our best versions of the magnets staying in place and having this flip out. So in the promo videos from VidCon, you've probably seen slow motion of flipping the legs out into this position, and that kind of is the thing that wows people. Another thing is we were working on the different screws here to attach, and so you'll see this screw was actually smaller than it ends up being in some of the later versions. So this was something that eventually changed. Also, being metal instead of 3D printed, it started to get a little louder, so the legs were kind of clanking together. So we experimented with putting these little pieces of rubber stuck on here to dampen the sound a little bit. We played around with putting feet on it as well, so having little feet with rubber bottoms on them to kind of separate the legs so they don't touch. You can see there, even if I squeeze this together, the legs didn't touch. But we ended up actually removing these feet and going back to something we thought up of before, which was just having magnets keep the legs together. So this is a 3D printed one in this smaller size. So if you take this size versus this size, you can see this silver one is much bigger. And when we showed this one to Casey Neistat at Craft and Commerce this summer, he said he wanted it smaller. We'd also thought about doing really small versions as well, because if you have a heavier camera, the further it is away from you, the heavier it's going to be for you to kind of hold out. So in this smaller size, it's a little bit more manageable when you have a heavier camera. But one of our favorite prototypes we've made is this little tiny one here. And so maybe someday we'll make a smaller version that's, for point and shoot cameras that don't need a lot of weight, but you do want to be able to kind of have a hand grip underneath the camera to hold it out in front of you. So I don't know, this smaller one here has been one of our favorite versions as well. So knowing that we kind of have this mini, this regular, and then this larger size, what we're going to do going forward is use this medium size. We're going to use this size as the final prototype. And so I think now would be a good time to show that to you guys. So let's take a look inside this box here, see what the final prototypes look like of the SwitchPod. Number one, number two. So these are the final two. Here's it looks like a little tool of some sort that Cole sent me. But we're gonna go ahead and show you what the final two prototypes look like. So, so smooth. So here is one of the biggest changes. We have a bigger screw. Let me go ahead and tilt that for you. So a bigger screw there to screw your camera on. So whether you're putting a quick release plate or a ball head or just your camera directly onto this, this is the screw you'll use to screw on your camera or ball head or quick release plate. And then there's a little piece of rubber here on the top that kind of keeps it in place. So when you tighten it down, it kind of grips into place there. So this screw is really nice. It's much bigger than the previous versions, than this tiny little one here. So I really like this bigger screw. Also, what's different is we have magnets here that we've blacked out. And you can see there's kind of a double finger groove here, and then there's two grooves here, but then there's also four more. So if you are going to hold with two hands like this, or if you just want to choke up on it when you have your camera there, maybe you're holding a heavier camera, or you want to bring it a little closer, you just want to be a little more stable, you can choke up like that, or you can be down like this. And this one, nice and smooth, quiet, and then when you set it down, it has rubber feet on the bottom right here, kind of recessed into the bottom. Let me go ahead and get a good shot of it right there. So you can see those rubber feet on the bottom, which means when it's on the table, it's not going anywhere. You put something heavy on this, it's super strong. These are made of aluminum, like I've mentioned. The final ones will be magnesium alloy, but prototype 001 is what I'm calling that one. I know there's a lot of previous prototypes. Maybe I'll use letters to say these, but got these two right here. So the two final prototypes. The really only difference between these two is that when this one was machined for like this area right here, and the magnets are not black, but this one, maybe this is 001 and this is 002. So if this is 002, the black magnets and the painted holes here. So what I envision these being used for is maybe you want to mount your microphone there so it's not as top heavy on your camera, or you want to mount a light or some other sort of accessory or something like that. And if you mount it on this right leg here, as you flip these open, it's still going to stay in the same spot. But if you're in tripod mode like this and you wanted to mount an additional thing, you could mount it right there as well. So pretty excited by this. We're going to be kickstarting it really soon. Not sharing a final date yet because we're kind of getting 2 more of these too and just kind of working on our launch plan. We've been spending a lot of time researching successful Kickstarter campaigns and figuring out what we should do to reach enough people that would be interested in this, as well as making sure we do the math correctly of how much these are going to cost to get made and ship to people and package and do everything. So these are the first 2 final prototypes of the SwitchPod. To be the first to find out when we launch, go to switchpod.co, enter your email address. You'll be getting personal emails from me about the development, about when we launch the campaign on Kickstarter, and that's pretty much it for this video. So thanks so much for watching. Love to hear your feedback or your excitement for the SwitchPod to come out soon. Really excited to finally share this thing. It's been over a year, barely, since kind of coming up with the idea and starting the development of it. But manufacturing physical products takes time. It takes time to have people design them, to 3D print them, to mail you them, for you to give feedback, for you to have manufacturers in other countries actually make machined versions of something close to the final version that you would want to use. So it's been a process. It's been expensive, but I'm really excited to launch this thing. So thanks so much for watching. I've been Caleb Wojcik, and I'll see you in another one. Cheers.